Hey there, welcome to Her Scars Tell a Story. I'm your host, Ann Calvillo, and today I am with a special guest, a longtime friend of mine. It's been about 11 years since I have seen her. And so I just want to introduce her. Hildy, welcome to our podcast.
I'm excited to be here. Very excited.
I love how the Lord just orchestrates things. And though it's been 11 years, we've had the opportunity to connect over the phone before today. I really felt that although it's been a long time, we've known each other from church, where Omar and I got saved. It's been a while since we last spoke, but I just feel like we really picked up where we left off.
Yes.
Just to see you when you came to my door, it felt so good.
It's like so cold outside, but I was like so excited to be here. I think I said that like 3 times, but it's so true because it's crazy how God will bring people back together for a purpose. It's like we've been following each other on social media for many, many years. You know, we're both now gone from that former ministry, you know, on our separate journeys. But then you had inboxed me on social media and I was like, oh my gosh, how that it was just so on time.
Yes.
And I was super excited to see what you were doing and just stepping out and using your voice and using it to amplify the voices of other women to share their stories. So I'm just honored to be here.
Thank you, Hildy. And I'm honored that you're here sitting right next to me. I know that over the years, she's just bopping away. I love it. But over the years, I know that the Lord has done a lot in your life. And as you were sharing with me last week on our phone call, those are some of the things that we're going to be talking about on today's episode. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
My name and age and everything.
Girl, tell us wherever you want to start, where you grew up, you know.
Okay. Everybody calls me Hildy, but those who know me and know me well call me Hildy. But it's Hilda Ortiz. And I have 2 daughters. They are now grown, 24 and 25. I have a 6-year-old grandson that I love very much. I was born in Gary and raised there on and off until I was 21 years old. And spent some time in North Carolina with my dad. And back here in Northwest Indiana is pretty much where I've been my whole life. And so, you know, the journey, basically, Dad, God rest his soul, he passed away in 2011. And my mother passed away in 2020, and my sister passed away 4 months after that, which was a big shock for us to lose both of them. So going through the grieving process, changes you. Yeah. Makes you question things. And it just fell off, like my journey, you know, with the Lord. And, you know, I don't say I ever cut him off, but I know I didn't always do right and live right. Or, you know, the grieving process, it's been like a roller coaster ride of emotions. Yeah. You know, I still can't believe it some days.
And you mentioned it brings about questions. What was that like?
Oh, goodness. Just talking to the Lord about things of what I could have done differently. You know, my father passed away in 2011, but I did have a relationship with him. I had a rocky upbringing with him, but we had restored our relationship, spent time together, talked to each other, said, I love you. He got to meet my daughters, his first grandchildren. You know, and so we got to spend that quality time together. But my mother and I, you know, that was also a very rocky relationship as well. But there were times, you know, if we spoke once a year, that was big. You know, our conversations would usually end in arguments because at 14, I was basically raised by the state. So from 14 till 21, I spent time in the foster care system, from group home to the Lake County Juvenile Detention Center in Crown Point and back again, but never went home from the age of 14 until 21.
What was that like for you?
Ironically, although I didn't like being in group homes, it actually provided me with a stability that I didn't have before. You know, with my mother, God rest her soul, you know, we were always moving around. We were not stable. You know, we suffered a lot. We were very poor. And she had 3 teenage kids that were out of control, and going nuts and doing whatever we wanted to do. And Mama was living her life. Mama was a single mom, and she wanted to live her life and do her thing. And we were buck wild, and we were ditching school, and we weren't home when we were supposed to, and we were taking off, and Mama was going to have a good time, so were we.
Yeah.
You know? I left. My sister and I took off one night, and next thing you know, back in those days, you know, if you're a runaway, they're going to put you in the system. They're going to lock you up in LCJC. And if your parents didn't show up to that D hearing, you were automatically placed in the system. That wasn't automatic.
Yeah.
That's not anymore.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
They're
So
going to
things
put you
have
right
changed.
back home. Oh, yeah, things have changed a whole lot.
Yeah. See, I can relate, though. You know, I had my mom and my dad. My dad had left when I was young. I was maybe 11 or 12 years old when my dad left. But my mom was left to take care of her 3 girls. And we were very rebellious. Once my dad left, it was like a free-for-all. We could do whatever we wanted, when we wanted. There was no curfew. Even though my mom tried to implement the curfew, we didn't abide by that. We didn't want to hear what Mom had to say. When he left, she fell into a state of depression. And it was a dark place for her. And so being teenagers, we took advantage of that. You know, while my mom was going through her thing, we were going through our thing, just wanting to be out there and do whatever it is that we wanted to do. My relationship with my mom was very rocky as well. So going back to that relationship, what did that look like for you and your mom?
Well, over the years, I think, goodness, where do I begin? You know, I don't ever want to make it seem like, you know, I love my mom, and in the end, God really restored our relationship. I do have the book coming out where I speak more about it, but I also said in that book I want to honor my parents, so it's not going to be list of, you're going to, you know, there's going to be some facts in there of what I went through with each of them, but at the same time, it is not out of a place of bitterness or anger. It's out of a healed heart. And I can honor them in their memory and see it for what it is, which was their own traumas as well. I've always felt very rejected by my mother, very rejected. And so she wasn't keeping up with court-ordered counseling, family counseling, or even picking me up on weekends like she was supposed to. It just got to the point that my social worker and my counselor both told me, you know, your mother hasn't been basically doing what she's supposed to do to get you, because the whole point was reunification back with my mother. But they're saying because she has not been doing her part, she hasn't been going by what the court is saying, we're going to give you a choice. You can either stay here in the group home placements, or you can go into a foster care home with foster care parents. And after all the stories that I heard about foster care from the other girls and everything that they went through, you know, thank God for the wonderful foster care parents out there that make a difference and shine some love and light into these kids' lives. But unfortunately, for every good foster care home, there were 10 horror stories I would hear. So more negative, more trauma that these kids have gone through. And so I was like, I'm not going in anybody's house. I know what to expect here. And if you're saying I can stay here, well, then that's what I'm going to do. I'd rather just stay here.
Going back to that relationship with your mom, I had that same kind of rocky relationship with my mom. I think for me, I needed that nurturer in my life, even before my dad had left. I love that you said that you want to honor your mom. And as you were sharing a little bit about your mom, I love to honor my mom too. Even though we had our rocky relationship, my mom was there. as best as she can be a mom, because she had her own cycle, her own dysfunctional family that she came from. Exactly. She was just showing us what she was taught as a child, what she went through in life. And as an adult, I finally understood that. Once I gave my life to the Lord, I even understood that more. So I was able to forgive, just as the Lord forgave me, because I wasn't a good daughter. I was, again, disobedient, rebellious.
That's so good. Because it's true. Yeah. You think like, shoot, she deserves it. She put men before us. So, it was so hard as a teenager to respect her because we always felt like we were not a priority. These men were, and they were extremely abusive. It would get really ugly. And we've seen our mother, suffer at the hands of these men, and that affected me. That affected my view. That affected my view of her as my mother. And then going through the foster care system, and I've had my kids in the foster care system. That's why it took me so long to age out at 21. Once I aged out at 21, she was a part of my daughter's lives. Like, even to this day, they're 24 and 25, and they have good memories of my mother. One of the stories is so cute where they're like, grandma didn't have much money, but when we were little, we thought she was rich because she would take us to the Dollar Tree when everything was still $1. and they were able to get whatever they wanted and came out with bag loads, And so they have really good memories of my mother. But as they got older, they did get to see the tension between her and I, and the arguments that we would have. And things of that nature, and the accusations. She would have accusations against me about certain things and this, that, and the other, and, accusations that were unfounded. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm like, if this is what people are telling you, are you defending me? I mean, what are you saying? It got to the point where I was just like, I don't care if I don't really speak to her. Again, if I talk to her once a year, I think that's good enough.
Right.
Well, I started going to a church on the south side of Chicago. It was called All Nations Worship Assembly, and powerful church. In 2018, I'll never forget it. It was Pentecost Sunday, right? And I think it was in May of 2018. Everybody's wearing white. They had an altar call at the end. So I got in line for prayer. And once I got up there, a woman of God began to prophesy some really bold words. And for people who don't know what prophesy is, it's just God speaking through someone else. Because God speaks in everything, and he can speak through everyone, including you and I. But this particular case, the woman of God was speaking some things about me that really touched my life, about who I was in him and what God was about to do. At the end of that, she tapped another woman of God, and this woman of God says, I got a powerful word on one side, and this woman of God came with I never received another word of correction the way that I did that day. A strong word of urgency where the woman of God said, God commands you to forgive your mother. He commands you to forgive. And I remember weeping up there because I said, Lord, I thought I did forgive her. Just because I don't talk to her don't mean I don't forgive her. I was like, I thought we were good. I think we're good, Lord. I'm over here trying to do right. Okay, hey, And she said, you have a deep root of bitterness against your mother, and God commands you to forgive her because all of your blessings are attached to her. And before, I've had prophetic words where people say, your mother, I hear her praying for you. Praying for you. And so by this time, I'm laid out on the floor. Mocha's coming out. Yeah. I'm just a mess.
I can't imagine.
I'm on the floor, just wow.
She came with it.
Oh, she came with it. She was obedient.
Yes.
To what God told her to tell me, which she also said, God commands you to call her today. When you leave here, call your mother, check on your mother. And by that time, it had been literally over a year since we have spoken. And the reason it was that long, I remember because I felt so hurt because she was in the hospital And I wanted to go see her, and she had just moved, and she refused to give me her location. She refused to tell me where she lived. She was getting ready to be discharged. And it hurt me so bad because she stopped answering my calls. I couldn't get a hold of her. I was just like, wow, and there goes the rejection again. And so after that, it's like, I'm just leaving her completely alone. I'm done trying, God. I'm done. Right. I'm just trying to be there for her. Why does she keep pushing me away? She doesn't do that to my brother and my sister, and I'm the oldest. And so when that happened right there at that altar, it was literally life-changing for me. And I remember getting up and preparing my heart, because I said, I'm going to do what you told me to do.
Yeah. And
I went to the house, and I waited till the evening till I was of the right mind and prepared my heart, because I was like, I already know. When I call, how she sounds, just somebody's tone, you can hear it feels like disdain. Yeah. So I was obedient. I called my mother, and I could hear it in her voice, like, oh, now you want to call. Yeah. And I was just like, okay. I was like, well, Mom, I just wanted to call and check in on you. I started off that way, huh? How are you doing? And she told me that for the past 2 years, that she had been dealing with cancer, and that, like, for the last stages of cancer. And so I was like, oh my gosh, Mom. I was like, I didn't know. She was like, well, I didn't tell none of the family. She was like, but I told your brother and your sister. I was like, but I'm not Mom, I'm your daughter, and I'm the oldest. You didn't think I had the right to know? Yeah. And I was tested right there, because I could have easily just been like, really, Mom? Like, I knew I shouldn't have called you. Like, I'm hurt all over again. But I knew what God told me to do, because it was so clear. Yeah. So I said, well, Mom, I was just reaching out to tell you that I forgive you. I really felt rejected. I don't know what it is between you and I. There's always been a wall here, and I've never felt you were really there for me. And I forgive you for leaving me in the foster care system to raise myself. And she didn't have much of a response, and much didn't change. We got off the phone, went to my women's group, talked about it. One of the prophets was like, you got one more thing to do. And she didn't even have to say it. I was just like, But I was obedient. Called my mother. And this time when I called her, I said, Mom, I just wanted to call you and tell you to forgive me for not being a very good daughter to you. And that's when something just broke, because all of a sudden her whole tone and the way she was speaking changed. And she was like, no, Mama, no, don't apologize to me. No, I know I wasn't a good mother to you guys. I know, Mama, what I did. And my mother carries so much guilt. And us as moms, we know how hard we are on ourselves, And that right there broke something in the spirit, to where me and my mother, from that point on, my mother never missed one day without texting me to tell me that she loved me. God bless you, Mamita. I love you. Que Dios le bendiga. Tell the girls I said I love them every single night up until she got too sick to do it. And from 2018, I had no idea that my mom was on borrowed time. But the Lord knew. He knew. Yeah. And I think in a sense that my mother felt rejected by me as well. Yeah. And so from that point on, I was basically the one that the doctor spoke to. I was basically the go-to. So she passed away in April of 2020. It was unexpected. It was a surprise. She was at home. She wasn't in the hospital. Okay. And we thought, we knew that she was still sickly, but we didn't know that she was still suffering from cancer, because she kept that from us. I just felt like the Lord allowed me to spend that time with her. I have no regrets.
As I'm listening to you, I'm hearing that the Lord allowed for you to go to your mother and say to her, as you did, Mom, forgive me for being a bad daughter. And a lot of times when we're hurt by our parents, especially our mother, because that's supposed to be the person that protects us, that takes care of us. You know, when we go to them, we don't automatically, it doesn't come natural to say, forgive me for being a bad daughter.
No.
Because we think of what they've done and how they've hurt us and how it's taken years to recover.
Yeah.
And still recover from
Yeah.
the things that were done in our childhood. And so you getting to that place of saying, Mom, forgive me for being a bad daughter. You said something broke.
Oh, yeah.
Something broke in the spirit. What broke from the spirit?
I just feel that barrier, that wall in our relationship was broken. Like the wall that was there for so many years, there was this ugly wall. There was this ugly tension there. I almost felt like, you know, I knew she loved me, but I didn't think she liked me.
You hit the nail right on the head right there with that. Yeah.
And I'm a words person. Yeah. So when I get a prophetic word, I'm eating it up and I'm reading it and I'm looking up the definitions and the meaning. And what I didn't know was that I was like, a root of bitterness. I don't think I'm bitter, because you think of bitter, you think of a mean person. I think of a mean person. And when I looked up the word bitterness, it said it is a mixture of sadness, anger, and disappointment. I said, well, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
It sounds about right. And so I thought, you know, I had already released her by saying, it's just better if I have nothing to do with her, because it's too painful to talk to her.
Right.
And so I just thank God for just really supernaturally bringing this about, like just speaking to me in such a way where I literally had the urgency to call her and talk to her, even though I didn't necessarily want to.
Yes.
Because you feel justified.
Yeah.
In your hurt.
Of course.
Like, God, you didn't see what she did all these years to me? Like, who's supposed to go to who here? Yeah. But the other part of that word was, all your blessings are attached to her. Everything that you've been needing. Do you know God had opened doors for me and blessed me and blessed me and blessed me since? And I haven't stopped seeing it, you know? And I think that had I written the book any earlier, I don't think I would have probably came from such a healed perspective.
And that's why the book was written when it was, after this.
It's almost done. It's almost not completely written, like it's out there.
It's almost there. It's
almost there.
But healing had to take place to that extent with your mom, and just the whole situation of everything that I felt like, from the word that was given to you to finding out my mom's on borrowed time. Yeah. And you didn't even know. You didn't know, but God knew. God knew. And so he prepared your heart.
He did.
He prepared your heart. Not all of us get that, Hildy.
No. And I realized that. And I didn't know that, 4 months later, we would lose my sister. And I just think that, I don't know if I could have really, in hindsight, really would be able to carry that. Because I didn't have much of a relationship with my sister at all. I didn't say much of a relationship, like not at all. Yeah. So I just know God and all his goodness. He knew. I thought I was all good, but God answered. We even spent 2019, the Christmas of 2019, I have pictures on my social media. Our very first Christmas together as a family with my daughters. She hadn't seen them in years. And it was her first time meeting my grandson. And it was beautiful.
Yeah, which his story's a testimony in itself. He's a miracle baby.
Yeah, that's another book. That's Nehemiah's journey.
Yes. Wow, Hildy, how many years has it been since your mom's passing?
2 years.
2 years.
This year made 2 years.
Now that it's been 2 years, and I didn't mention it, but I know you did, you've been writing a book, and you're almost done with it, right? But you mentioned something to me as you were writing this book. It was like therapeutic. There was healing as you were writing this book. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh my gosh. I almost feel like God has directed me every step of my life on what to do. Maybe not as much as I'd want him to,
Mm-hmm.
but a woman of God, I call her Mama Linda, and powerful woman of God, wonderful woman who mentored me, kept me under her wing, and just powerful. Her hugs have you falling out somewhere, for real.
Yeah.
Linda Moore. She had told me years ago, gave me a prophetic word on that. First time I ever heard it, write your story, even if it's just for you. Write your story. Years later, and throughout the years, she would continue to tell me, you need to write your story step by step. You're going to find healing through the pages of your book. And so I decided to go ahead and do that and probably go a different route as far as writing my book, you know? And going through this journey, it really uncovers so many dormant. I've talked about my story and the public school systems, you know, recently just got into the Lake County Juvenile Detention Center as well to talk to the girls for the first time in like 2 years last month, this month actually.
That's so great.
Beautiful, yes. Through the Reclaim Our Kids Foundation. And you know Patrick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Through him. Hey, he's got that ministry.
Oh my gosh, yes. He touched so many kids in all these years. I thank God for, you know, that organization. So I was like, you know, you just are pretty matter of fact when you're used to telling your story. What I didn't expect it to be such an emotional roller coaster. I wanted to quit so bad. I didn't want to. There are times I just didn't even want to finish. It was too painful. I almost started getting anxiety. I was like, I ain't never dealt with this before.
Yeah.
You know, and crying and feeling all these old emotions all over again that I just thought were done. I'm healed. I'm over it. And thank goodness for therapy. Because my therapist told me, feel every emotion and release it.
Yes, Hildy. That is so good. And I just want to share, just a couple of days ago, I was reflecting and I was thinking about, why do I write? Because I love to journal. I journal every day. And one of the things, going back to why this podcast, was, you know, to give women a platform to share their voice, to share their story, to share their scars, right? And when you think of a scar, you think of a wound that was. You think of something that was, you know, there was some type of impact, some type of hurt there, which creates this wound. And wounds untreated, they get infected, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so over time, you know, you have to tend to the wound. You have to care for the wound. And over time, it becomes a scar. And you look back at that scar and you're like, you look at your scar and you're like, you're reminded at one time, that wound that was there, that's healed over time. That's healed for me. My emotional wounds, my spiritual wounds were healed by the Lord, you know. And going back to the writing, I feel like every day there is a rain shower of emotions that we go through.
Yes.
Right? Like,
it's crazy. I literally had to go a different route because I would write and get so frustrated. I would write and then go back. I would write and then scrunch up the paper, throw it away. But what was I looking at where it was Pastor Teray Roberts? He said it so perfectly. He said, writing a book, when you're writing a book, it's like giving birth. You're going through birth pains.
Yeah.
I said, oh my gosh. I was like, this is why I was like, I didn't expect it to be this emotionally taxing on me.
Yes.
To the point where I didn't even want to finish. I didn't want to follow through with this commitment.
Yeah. And that's how writing can be, Hildy, especially when you're journaling your deepest thoughts, your deepest hurts, and you're journaling. And I feel like for me, it's therapeutic. It's a release. When I'm writing or journaling, it's a release of whatever that emotion is that I'm feeling in that moment or that day, or the variety of emotions that I'm feeling that day. But it's really feeling them, because for me, it took me to understand that a lot of my destructive patterns of numbing my pain so that I wouldn't feel it.
Oh, yeah.
But in my past, I would drink it. I would eat my way through my feelings. I would just shut down or isolate myself so that I wouldn't feel, if that makes sense, kind of just drown out those feelings and thoughts so I wouldn't feel them. But my healing came through allowing myself to feel that pain, because it was in allowing myself to feel that pain, I felt freedom. Yeah. I felt freedom. God began to heal those areas that I had built walls around that nobody knew about but me. And I'm sure they knew because you start to show bits and pieces of it through bitterness, through anger, through lashing out, or, just sudden crying. Like, why am I crying? Why do I feel so sensitive today? Yeah. When you've got all these emotions and feelings just bottled up. Right. So for me, writing and community, being able to share my story, being able to just be real and honest with my struggles, with my hurts, with my pains. Tell me how that looks like for you. How are you able to come to a place to write about the very things you wanted to run away from?
Yeah, I needed some help. I took some time off this year from work, and I had time to think. I had time to process, and I was like, you know what? I could either go into, I could get my real estate license. I could go into a whole different direction. But I really felt on my heart, I said, Lord, I want to work on my purpose. And I felt like when I prayed about it, then he reminded me, I told you to write that book. I was like, I'm going to do it. And so I found a publishing company that will help you get your story out by just your voice. And then they will edit it, print it. So it's all my words. It's my story. And so while I'm talking to the other person on the line, we meet, once a week, every week for a certain amount of time. My goodness, the questions that she will pull out of me, I felt like I was in therapy. And it helped me. And I needed it. I needed to do it in a different way. I had to do it in a different way. Now, what's happening is I've gotten back to journaling. I think the last 2 years I really fell off of journaling, but it helped me to write down my emotions. It helped me to write down what I was feeling, what I was seeing, what needed to be expressed. And so now I'm back to writing in my journal, dating things, really reestablishing my connection, my relationship with God. Just me and him, because I was like, I said, Lord, I love you. And I say it all the time. I love you, Lord, but your people are crazy. So I'm just going to focus on you. I'm just going to focus on you. And then I'll know when you need me to go here, to go there, I'll listen, but for right now, I just want to do what you want me to do. So this process of my kind of writing, kind of like speaking into an app and it's writing it for you, except I got to speak to a person so they could write it for me and express my feelings that way, and speaking them out. Took me on an entirely new journey, because like I said, I tried to sit down and write, and it was so overwhelming for me. But yeah, what's funny is I know that there's more books in me. And I was like, okay, Lord, I know you like, okay, now you can sit your tail down and get a pencil, okay?
One of the things that I mentioned to you was that through your story, through your healing process, as you're penning down the words that are on your heart, that you live through your life experience, it's also going to bring healing to those that pick up that book, who read your story, who read into everything that you've been through, who read into your feelings and your emotions, and that can relate to your struggle. That in itself is a blessing, because now your story and everything you're having to go through, having to process these feelings that you were okay with kind of leaving them, dug in somewhere deep where you wouldn't have to visit them again. But now it's like the Lord's going to use this book to minister to a lot of women out there, Hildy, that are right where you are and where you were, where you are now, and where you have yet to go.
Where I have yet to go. That's true.
And for me, I see it like life comes with a cost, right? And even as believers, this journey, it costs us.
Mm-hmm.
It costs us. It's a daily denying ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And following him. And that's the hardest thing to do. That's
It
the
is.
hardest thing to do is
It really is.
to deny ourselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Leave me alone, Lord. I gave you all these years faithful, holy, and celibate. Okay. What else you want from me? Let me have some fun. Okay.
Yeah.
Leave me alone for a little bit. I did it your way. Okay. You're like, I did it your way, Lord.
I think that people who, Hildy, can relate to your story, who can relate to everything that you've been through, this book is going to speak to them. And I believe that. And even those of us who haven't been in the system like you have been, as we talked earlier, some of us have gone through that orphan spirit
Mm-hmm.
where we know we're saved and we're walking with God, but we still have yet to understand that we are children of God, our identity in the Lord. And so even then, people who may have not been in the system, who are still struggling though with that orphaned spirit of rejection, abandonment, will be able to be ministered through this book. And I'm excited for that. I'm so excited for that.
I was like, when I wanted to name the title, I thought it was fitting because most people view, the literal meaning of an orphan is somebody without a mother and father, which I know a few of those, and my heart goes out to them and I pray for them because it does feel like you're living life alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the same time, there's also those of us like myself that grew up in the system and not raised by mom or dad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's a form of trauma.
Yes, it is.
And in a sense, I was also an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
Foster care system raised me.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that because I think it's important. And a lot of people, those of us who come from broken homes where mom left or dad left or had to face what you faced, go through the system. You're left with the sense of, who am I?
You don't know who you are because you don't have anybody to affirm you. You don't have anybody who speaks that life into you or gives you a picture of your future, that pushes you to get your education, that pushes you. It's important. It wasn't important to me.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You live for that day. You don't live for the future.
Right. And I can relate to that too.
Mm-hmm.
I can relate to that. Many people can relate to that. You're just living day by day.
I'm living day by day. This is life.
Yeah, and kind of in survival mode.
That's a perfect way to put it. You're literally in survival mode. Yeah.
And
just trying to make it.
Yeah.
Day by day. I don't know, where I'm going, what I'm doing, or who I am.
Yes.
And if you would have asked me, if I knew who I was, I would have been so confident. And like, I know who I am.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
I would have been so confident. But looking back on my decisions and my choices and, even writing this book and going to therapy has really even helped me to see why I see relationships, even romantic relationships, the way that I do, why I am the way that I am. And so much of it is having a loss of identity at a time where I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I ended up pregnant at 17 in the system. So both of my daughters were born in that system as well. You don't have a picture of your future. You make that person your future. You start to put your dependence on another person. Like, I feel like he's all I got. He's all I got right now.
Yeah. I can relate to that as well. You start looking for identity in relationships, in the wrong relationships.
Yeah.
This is who I am, and he completes me.
He completes me.
The famous line that
my eyes are rolling.
I can't. Yeah.
My eyes are rolling.
I can't stand to hear anymore.
I hate it. I was like, I was there. I was there.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever said he completes me, but my
But you
actions,
thought it, yeah.
My actions did. I was like, I'm gonna get married.
Yes.
And we're gonna raise these kids together. I don't know what la la land I was in because it was such a toxic relationship. Why did I want to get married?
Yeah.
Because I thought he was all I had.
Yes. Exactly. And you, in your mind, now you start to settle. You start to settle, like, okay, I think he's going to be as good as it gets for me. So
nothing I would ever take now. But it's a representation of how I felt about myself at that time.
Yes, yeah.
Like I was lost, broken, and hurting,
Yeah.
Anytime you have to say you need a person to complete you, you need to still stay alone and work through those areas. Like, why do you feel incomplete? That's totally off track, right? But it's the truth.
Somebody needs to hear it, Hildy. And I do believe that I felt that way too. I felt like this relationship, it broke me. It broke me who I thought I was, and it had nothing to do with God's plan for my life, but I needed someone to complete me. I was desperate to find that love.
Unconditional.
So I thought, going through the years of abuse was love, going through the years of jealousy, going through the years of putting up with the mental, emotional, physical beatings. This is love. And I was so wrong. I look back at that 17-year-old girl that I was in that toxic relationship, and I think, girl, I did you wrong. I did you wrong because you didn't know any better.
No.
You didn't know any better. All you knew was that cycle that most women like me, statistics talking, end up like this. And no, I look back at that young woman and you know what? I can grieve her, which I do, Hildy. I take time when I remember or like going back, revisiting again, revisiting sometimes those wounds. I can grieve her and say, you know what? Now the Lord has redeemed you. The Lord has redeemed you. Now he's the love of your life. And now he's the one that completes you. He fills in all the gaps where I thought I needed a man to fill. Even being married, a man does not fill in those gaps. I'm married to a good man, a man who loves God. But even then, Hildy, he does not complete me. No. God completes me. Yeah. And God fills in my gaps. That it would be unfair for me to put that expectation on my husband.
Poor guy.
That only God could fill.
Nothing's ever good enough.
Right, yeah. So
he would never be able to please you.
He wouldn't.
And there's so many people in those kind of relationships.
Yes, exactly. And so it's knowing that God, he's so good. We're just talking about how good he is.
Yes, he really is. I'm like, Lord, you know me. You know what a mess I am and what a mess I can be.
Yes.
Like, you see everything I've ever done. And I think one of the biggest things that I've learned in my journey of serving God, I think for many years, I would work and work and work to earn his approval. I would work and work and work.
Yes.
And then I came to the realization that I'm a daughter. I don't have to work to earn anything. Like, I remember being celibate for so many years and then having a fall, and I literally felt like my head was down in my spirit. Like, I was just walking with my head down. Like, Lord, I don't know if you're ever going to use me again. And I do believe that a lot of that has to do with religion and church, and they put these really high expectations and they put you on pedestals. Because you're celibate, and now you've earned, you've earned this, that, and that from God.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And really it's grace.
It's grace. I was just going to say that.
Grace will put somebody that was wallowing and playing in the mud.
Yes.
And put them side by side with somebody who's been serving God and doing it right for many years. And they both earn the same reward.
Yes.
That's the grace of God.
That is the grace of God. It's only the grace of God.
It's only the grace of God. And I think, like, I didn't even realize that until years later when after I had, I messed up and, it's such a big deal in the church. Like, she's a leader, you know?
Yeah.
She messing up and she's, especially in the small churches, they have a heyday. But I understood the grace of God,
Yeah.
And brought down that pride. What will people say? What will people think?
Yeah, the shame.
God, the shame. I will never be able to be where I once was at with you, Lord. Look at the mindset. It's sad.
Yeah.
But God's like, you're my daughter. I love you.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So I'm going to give you time to cry. I'm going to give you time to heal. But then, dust yourself off because you got some more work to do.
yes, when we find ourselves in that situation, it's knowing that, yeah, the shame, you feel this overwhelming shame, but then when it's God and it's His grace, you come to a place of repentance.
Yeah.
And not everybody around you understands that, but that's okay because the Lord knows my heart and He knows where I'm at with Him right now, and He's healing and He's working in me, and that work never finishes until the day we go to be with Him in His glory.
Ain't never going to be done.
No, until then, it's a constant, continual work
Every
of the
day.
Holy Spirit working in us.
Every day.
Every day, every day. And we don't earn that.
No.
Nothing that we do can earn it, justify it. No, it's all the work of God. And how grateful are we because of that? Yeah. How grateful should we be because of that? Every day, Lord, thank you, right? Because of that grace.
Every day is a new day.
Yes.
I don't care if you've been messing up all year long.
Yeah.
Today's a new day.
Today's a new day.
Today's a new day. Don't be ashamed. Don't, because sometimes you'll just be like, well, I messed up so much that, I'm in too deep now. I'm in too deep. Even in your mess, talk to God.
Yes.
Talk, because He hears you. Other people, may not understand, and other people may point the finger. Other people may judge or, but God Himself, as long as there's breath in your body, every day is a new day to begin again, to start over.
Yes.
That's God's way of telling us,
It is. And
here's your chance.
I was sharing with someone the other day that it's taken me now in my 40s to get to a place.
Me too.
To get
43, girl.
Yeah, to get to a place where it's like no longer do the words and the opinions of other people matter. It doesn't matter anymore. What matters most is what God says about me, what His word says about me, not the opinions, not the words of others, because we give so much room and space for people to speak into our lives. And then we turn off the volume to God's voice, and then we find ourselves in a place of, now I've drowned out the voice of God to listen to everything that everybody's saying, when God says, why are you not listening to me? Why are you not heeding my voice? Why are you not allowing my Holy Spirit to minister to you, to comfort you, to help you in your time of need? Now you're stuck in shame and guilt and condemnation. And then we begin to idolize people's opinions. Their words become more important and they carry more weight than what God says.
Very true.
And the Lord had to check my heart there. He had to check my heart. And now at the age of 40, I'm like, thank you, Lord. He liberated me. He liberated me.
Feels
and
good, don't it?
It does. It feels so good. But you know what? Because it happens so often that even when I start to hear the noise and people's voices, I'm like, oh Lord, I'm listening to you right now. I'm turning down that volume and I'm listening to you. And there are times where I have to say, Lord, forgive me. We have to constantly check our hearts.
Yeah, you're right.
We have to constantly check our hearts. I think for me, that's huge. And again, at the age of 40, it's finally taking me this long, Hildy, not to put the weight of people's words on my shoulders.
Yeah, true.
And Lord, what does your word say about me?
It's true. Even up until recently, I've struggled with, letting people know all about my life. I think right now, where I am now is I am the most transparent I've ever been. Putting your life out there for everybody to read, critique. It's such a place of vulnerability.
Yes,
You're just
it is.
I was like, oh my goodness, I feel so naked right now.
Yes.
That's like really putting it out there, just putting it out there. But it's necessary. I think learning now to, I was on a podcast a few years ago as well. We were talking about some of the stuff in church, but they'll put you on a pedestal and talking about so many issues, how some women are falling away left and right for a man, this, that, and the other. And I've carried shame because I'm like, I can't say that I done gave up already, threw in the towel. I was still worried about what the church, because it was a Christian podcast. I was worried about what the church people were going to think. I was worried they're going to talk about me, So it's a level of pride there, but also a very real, dealing with that rejection your whole life and even feeling it in the church. It's just like, good Lord, I don't fit anywhere. And I realized I'm not meant to fit.
Yes.
I'm really not. I was okay, Lord, there's something you placed on my life, honey, because them devils get mad. I'll just show up and all of a sudden, what is going on? And so I understand who I am now more than ever in my life, and being free to use my voice, being free to talk about my scars, being free to talk about my shame and my mistakes. And, because 2020 was definitely a ride for me. I got drunk for the first time and, I was having sex and doing all I wanted to do. I just gave up, caring, I don't really care what y'all think. Sick of y'all always talking. Y'all talk too much as it is. I'm gonna give you something to talk about, all right? Maybe in the most negative way ever. But I'm so grateful because God never gives up on you no matter what. His love is always calling. It's like, I don't want to deal with that. I don't even want to be that person. I don't even want to be that, So I'm still in a journey, girl. And I'm still on a journey.
I just appreciate your honesty, Hildy. You don't know, with all my heart, I appreciate your honesty, because so many people feel like they have to cover their wounds. They have to cover them. They feel to a degree like, I can't let anyone know. And so therefore they prolong their healing. They prolong whatever it is that needs to be done in their heart and in their lives for fear of what people are going to say. For fear, they've now become enslaved to the thoughts and the opinions of people.
Yeah, and it's sad to say, in the church,
the only one we should have a reverence and fear for is God.
Amen.
He's the only one.
There's so many people living a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
In leadership.
Yes, that's what happens.
Living a lie. Bunch of performers. You're placed on a pedestal.
Yes.
And you're so scared to fall off that thing, because if people only knew. And then you hurt yourself because you're carrying so much baggage on the inside, and you need help. You need deliverance.
Yes.
You can't talk to nobody. I remember feeling I can't talk to nobody. They're going to judge me. They're going to talk about me. They're going to spread my whole business everywhere. Because I've heard it done. I know what they did to the people that messed up, and they were talked about and slandered, and by the people that are supposed to restore. So it puts you in that shackled box where you just keep it to yourself. And I'll just deal with it on my own, and God never meant us to do it alone and to do it on our own.
No, he doesn't. We're supposed to be a safe place for one another. And I think that's why in my 40s, I've developed this, I call it this Godfidence, where
I like that.
I've developed it over the years, but now more than ever, I see it come to fruition in my life, where I can just be me. Like you said, naked.
Yeah.
Naked. And in our women's group, that's one of the things that we say, we're a safe place. So even if you come with your mess, with your nakedness, you are loved and you are healed in that environment. You are going to grow in that type of environment.
Yeah, you will.
Because what hinders us is that blanket of shame, that blanket of guilt, that blanket of, I have to pretend to be someone I'm not so that I can be accepted and affirmed by people. No, you can be you.
Yeah.
With all your wounds and scars, you can be you, and you're loved by God, and you're loved by those in your community, in your safe space. And I thank you for that. I thank you for creating that safe space today in this episode.
I thank you, Anne.
I ask all my guests, what are some words of advice that you would want to give to a young woman, maybe right now struggling to find her identity, maybe going through some of the things that you went through? What would your words of encouragement be for her?
You were created for a purpose. You are so valuable. I think that's something I didn't know and I didn't hear about myself for a long time. it was my relationship that really kept me. We live in a day and age, I was listening, what did they say the data was? Like over 90% of young ladies hate their bodies. Got them BBLs, honey. They sucked and tucked and nipped and snipped, Yeah. Over 90% of girls struggle so badly with their self-image that they'll do whatever it takes to make it into something that they're happy with. Now, don't get me wrong. I know a few people that got some extra flesh taken off and got the little tummy tucks and, the boobies just ain't what it used to be. They had the babies. I mean, no judgment. Right. But it goes to show you self-image is huge. Yeah. Who am I? Am I beautiful? And all this on social media, all these Instagram models and all these lifestyles where the majority are fake lifestyles, Yes. And you have that to compare to. I mean, gosh, I say you're valuable and you were created for a purpose.
Healthy.
And you have a God who hears you.
Yes.
A God who loves you.
Thank you so much for blessing us with your story. Like I said, your transparency, it means everything because we need to hear more honest conversations from women who have been through the trauma, even our failures in life, to be okay with talking about them, to be okay with saying, this is what I learned through that season in my life. And now I'm able to talk about it. And now I'm able to share it with someone so that they too can find healing and hope in the midst of their journey or in the midst of their struggle. So I really want to thank you, Hildy.
Thank you, Anne, for having me. I'm so blessed to be here today. Yay. It was great.
I pray that your story, your voice would touch many hearts and many women's lives. I want to thank you all for listening to this episode of Her Scars Tell a Story.